They say that the perfect life is like a house of cards. One little breath, and it could all come crashing down. I've been living in this quiet Chicago suburb with Nathan for 5 years, and I really thought we'd built something solid. Our house has that magazine-style charm, with a white fence and the flowers we planted together last spring. Every Sunday when we walked hand in hand in the neighborhood park, the neighbors would smile at us as if to say, yeah, they made it. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to get more stories like this. Nathan is an architect and I work in digital marketing. We had that comfortable routine of cooking dinners together, binge-watching shows on the couch, and making plans to start a family soon. I used to brag to my friends about how we were a modern couple, without those old-fashioned gender roles our parents had. At least, that's what I believed. Taylor's new house party was the event of the month with our group of friends. She had finally landed that amazing apartment with the lake view she'd always dreamed of. Champagne was flowing, the playlist was perfect, and everyone was laughing and celebrating. Then Ryan commented on how immaculate the place looked for someone who had only moved in a couple of weeks. It's because she doesn't have a Nathan at home, I piped up, lifting my glass. If she did, she'd probably find socks under the sofa and dishes in the sink. Everyone laughed. Brittany almost choked on her drink. Emma's basically the CEO of the house, I continued, feeling like all eyes were on me. Nathan still hasn't figured out that the washing machine doesn't start on its own. She has a spreadsheet for the household chores, Nathan tried to joke, but I noticed a tense smile that didn't reach his eyes. A spreadsheet he never reads, I shot back, which got even more laughs. Last week, I asked him to clean the bathroom. I got home from work and all I found was a clean sink, as if the toilet were going to magically clean itself. Brittany clapped. Just like Mark. They think they deserve a medal when they wash a glass. The night went on energetically. We got home a little late. I was a bit dizzy from the champagne. Nathan drove in silence, but I didn't think anything of it. It was just another perfect Saturday in our perfect lives. On Monday, I noticed something different. Nathan made the coffee and left in a hurry, without our usual goodbye kiss. I texted him during the day, and his replies were short, okay. At work. Yeah. It was as if he was saving his words. Throughout the week, the silence grew. Nathan kept coming home late, blaming urgent projects. We'd have dinner with the TV on, filling the empty space between us. When I tried to kick off our Friday night routine, he mumbled that he was tired and turned away in bed. Is everything okay? I asked on Saturday morning as he stared out the window with his coffee in hand. Sure, he replied without looking at me. You seem distant, Nathan. Just tired. It's more than that, I insisted, gently touching his arm. We barely talk these days. The silence between us was heavy until he finally turned to face me. His eyes held a sadness I'd never seen before. What happened at Taylor's party? He began, his voice low as if choosing every word carefully. Do you realize how you talk about me to others? What do you mean? Turning me into the dopey husband for jokes. The incompetent guy who can't even clean his own house. They were just jokes, Nathan. Everyone does it. No, they don't. He set his cup down on the table. You humiliated me in front of our friends. And it wasn't the first time. I wanted to protest, to say he was overreacting, but something in the firmness of his voice made me hold back. Have you ever stopped and thought about how I feel when you tell everyone I'm useless at home? Like I live with a child rather than a partner. I never called you useless, I defended, though my words felt weak. You didn't even need to use that word. It's in your tone, in the laughs, in the pitying looks I get afterward. As if I were less than you. I fell silent, feeling my stomach drop. I had never seen those so-called jokes from his side before. Nathan's words echoed in my head that night as I stared at the ceiling. He had gone to sleep on the sofa for the first time in 5 years of marriage. "You don't respect me, Emma." That phrase haunted me, accusing me. I grabbed my phone, because I couldn't sleep, and started searching. I typed hesitantly, "jokes about husband harmful." The results surprised me. Article after article talked about how humor directed at your partner can mask real resentments, how constant jokes undermine trust, and how communication patterns, based on putting each other down, are signs of deeper problems. One psychologist explained in a podcast, if you constantly joke about your partner's incompetence, you're reinforcing a harmful narrative, both for him and for yourself. I moved on to videos about power dynamics in relationships. A couples therapist said, disrespect rarely starts with big gestures. It usually begins with small comments, seemingly harmless jokes, and knowing looks shared at your partner's expense. Every word felt like it was aimed right at me. I closed my eyes, and uncomfortable memories started coming up. Nathan would try to show me a project he was proud of and I'd respond distractedly while scrolling through my social media. I'd correct the way he folded his clothes in front of my friends. I'd use a condescending tone when he suggested a restaurant for dinner. I opened our photo album on my phone and went through images from the past few months. In many of them, I could now see what I hadn't noticed before, like the increasingly forced smile on Nathan's face, the fading sparkle in his eyes. How had I not seen that happening? The next morning, I found Nathan already dressed and making coffee. I rehearsed what I wanted to say in my head, but the words felt inadequate. I spent all night researching. I began hesitantly. About how jokes can hurt. About respect in relationships. Nathan stayed facing away, stirring his coffee. I never thought I was disrespecting you, I continued. I always assumed it was just our way of joking around. But yesterday, when you spoke, I realized I hadn't considered how you felt. He turned around, his face a mix of tiredness and skepticism. It's not just about Taylor's party, he finally replied. It's about the last 2 years, maybe even longer. It's about how you talk to me when we're with friends versus when we're alone. It's about me never doing anything right enough for your standards. That's not true, I automatically protested, then fell silent. It was exactly that kind of defensive response that stopped me from really listening. Or maybe it is. I need to think about this. I spent the next few days in a kind of painful self-discovery. I started jotting down every time I caught myself thinking a demeaning thought about Nathan. It was scary to see how often it happened. When he forgot to put away the ingredients after cooking, my first thought was, typical. Like a 5-year-old. When he took too long in the shower, I thought, men and their inability to manage time. These were little judgments I had never questioned before. I scheduled a video call with my therapist, someone I hadn't spoken to in months. It looks like you're starting to uncover your unconscious biases, she commented after I explained everything. Many of us absorb these cultural narratives about men being less capable in certain areas. The difference is that you're having the courage to recognize it now. How do I fix this? I asked, anguished. How do I show Nathan that I can change? Genuine change takes time, Emma. It's not just about choosing different words, but about transforming your perspective. And more importantly, he needs to see that the change is consistent, not just a temporary reaction. I started to really pay attention to what Nathan did around the house, at work, in our life together. I noticed how he always watered the plants without me asking, how meticulously he managed our finances, how he remembered my family's birthdays when I would forget. Small contributions I had either minimized or taken for granted. One Saturday, I made breakfast, a task Nathan usually handled on weekends, and left a note. Thank you for taking care of me all these years. I want to do more for you too. He read the note, nodded slightly, but didn't say anything. I knew that a broken trust isn't fixed with a simple gesture. In the following weeks, I worked hard to change my patterns. When Nathan washed the dishes, instead of my usual "you left that spot dirty," I'd say, "Thank you for taking care of that." When he picked an outfit that didn't match for an event, instead of rolling my eyes and suggesting something better, I'd ask, "Do you feel comfortable in that?" That's what matters. It was hard. Years of habit don't just vanish. Sometimes, those demeaning words were right on the tip of my tongue, and I had to take a deep breath to hold them back. Other times, I slipped back into my old ways, especially when I was stressed or tired. One night, when Nathan cooked and the food turned out a bit too salty, my comment came out before I could stop it. "I think you mixed up a teaspoon with a tablespoon again, huh?" He went silent. I immediately realized my mistake. "Sorry," I said quickly. "That was an uncalled-for comment. The food is really good. Thank you for dinner." "I can see you're trying," he said after a moment. "But sometimes it feels like you're just replacing criticism with a forced compliment, not really changing the way you see me." That hurt, but he was right. I was focusing on changing my words, not my underlying perspective. That's when I started doing something different. Instead of just monitoring my outward responses, I began to question my inner thoughts. Why did I automatically assume I knew better about household chores? Why did I expect perfection from him in areas where I was the one making mistakes? Why did I feel such a need for control? Those questions led me into deeper conversations, not just about our marriage, but about how I was raised and the relationship models I had internalized. Nathan also slowly opened up about how he felt diminished, not just by me but by a culture that often portrays men as incapable when it comes to handling household responsibilities. Slowly, very slowly, I began noticing subtle changes. Nathan started spending more time at home again. Our conversations lasted longer than just a few minutes. One day, while we were grocery shopping, something extraordinary happened. "Which cereal do you prefer?" I asked, holding 2 boxes. "The one with more sugar than a donut, obviously," Nathan replied with a cheeky smile. "Oh, so now you're a nutrition expert?" I joked, raising an eyebrow. For a second, I froze, worried I'd slipped back into my old habits. But then he laughed, a genuine laugh I hadn't heard in weeks, and tossed a box of fruit cereal into the cart. "An absolute expert. I learned everything on Google last night," he replied, still smiling. We continued down the aisle, exchanging light teasing, and for the first time in a long while, I felt that old connection again. But there was something different now, a new, unspoken boundary that we both respected. Our teasing was mutual and light, without that biting edge from before. In the car on the way home, Nathan took my hand as he drove. "I missed that," he said simply. "Me too," I replied, squeezing his hand. "I think I'm learning the difference between laughing with you and laughing at you. And I'm learning to trust that difference again," he added. The real test came 3 months later. Brittany invited us to a dinner at her place, the first social event with our friends since Taylor's party. I felt a knot in my stomach when I got the invite. That same crowd, that same dynamic that had revealed so much about our relationship. "We don't have to go if you don't want to," I commented to Nathan as we prepared dinner that night. "I think we should," he replied, chopping vegetables precisely. "We can't avoid our friends forever." I got home early on the day of the dinner, nervous like a teenager before a first date. I picked out my outfit carefully, remembering how Nathan always complimented that dark blue dress. When he got home from work, I saw a surprised look in his eyes. "You look beautiful," he remarked. "I wanted to be pretty for you," I replied, feeling my cheeks warm, just like in those early months of dating. In the car, I mentally rehearsed how I would react if someone made jokes at Nathan's expense. I had spent too long fixing the damage to let it happen again. Brittany's house was as impeccable as ever, with the table set elegantly and Mark serving fancy drinks at the makeshift bar. Taylor and Ryan were already there, enthusiastically discussing a new restaurant. At first, everything went smoothly. We talked about work, the new series everyone was watching, and travel plans. I felt Nathan gradually relax next to me, his hand occasionally finding mine under the table. It all happened during dessert. Mark mentioned the renovation they were planning for his kitchen. "We're gonna need your professional opinion, Nathan," he said while serving more wine. "Although, Emma will probably have the final say, right? We all know who really runs your place." There were a few laughs, the same old energy in the air. I could tell Nathan tensed slightly beside me. "Actually," I said without hesitation, "Nathan has an incredible eye for design. The built-in shelf in our living room was his idea, and everyone asks who the designer was." Nathan looked at me, surprised by the defense I never expected to have to give. "You guys are so cute defending each other," Brittany commented with a smile that I now recognized as playfully teasing. "But, Emma, be honest, he still leaves his socks all over the house, doesn't he?" The table fell quiet. This was usually the moment when I'd join in on the teasing, confirm the stereotype, and score those easy laughs at my husband's expense. "Actually, Brittany," I replied calmly, "Nathan is incredibly organized with his things. I'm the one who always loses my keys and leaves coffee cups lying around." The silence that followed was brief but meaningful. I could feel Nathan's gaze on me, a mix of gratitude and something deeper. "Well, you're lucky then," Brittany finally said, clearly uncomfortable breaking the usual script. "Mark still hasn't reached that level." "Maybe because you never gave him the benefit of the doubt," I replied with a gentle but firm smile. Mark raised his eyebrows, looking at his wife with an expression that said, "She's got a point." The conversation naturally shifted to another topic, but something had changed in that room. A small revolution had taken place. On the drive home, Nathan was silent, but this silence was different from that after Taylor's party. It wasn't loaded with anger, but with reflection. "Thank you," he finally said as we waited at a red light. "For what you said at Brittany's." "Don't thank me for speaking the truth," I replied, gently touching his face. "I'm sorry it took me so long to realize how much I was hurting you." That night marked a definitive turning point. It wasn't just about defending Nathan in public. It was about truly seeing and valuing who he is, about unlearning years of habits and assumptions. In the weeks that followed, I noticed small changes in our dynamic. Nathan began taking more initiative at home, not because I asked, but because he felt safe to act without fear of criticism. I started asking for his opinion more often, and, surprisingly, accepting it when it differed from mine. Our relationship was finding a new balance. 6 months after Taylor's party, we decided to throw our own celebration for our wedding anniversary. As we prepared the house, I realized how much we had grown. "Do you think we should put the drinks on the counter, or set up a bar in the corner?" I asked as we organized the living room. "The corner would be better for the flow of people," Nathan suggested. "But you've always preferred using the counter." "Let's try your way," I replied, genuinely curious to see how it would work. The smile I received made every extra trip across the room worth it. As the guests started to arrive, I watched Nathan greet them confidently, proudly showing off the house that now truly felt ours, not just my territory, where he simply lived. Taylor commented quietly that he seemed different, more present, was exactly what she said. In the middle of the night, Ryan, already a bit buzzed, began telling a story about how his kid put his phone in the washing machine. Speaking of not knowing how to use appliances, he said, turning to Nathan with that old knowing look, "Remember that time you tried to bake a cake and mixed up the settings on our air fryer?" I could feel the familiar tension coming back, but before I could say anything, Nathan calmly replied, "Actually, I've learned a lot since then. Emma and I have been cooking together. We found out that I'm better with savory dishes, and she rocks desserts." He smiled at me. "We're a good team when we're not competing." The simplicity and honesty of that response completely disarmed Ryan. There was no defensiveness or resentment, just the truth of two people learning to grow together. Later that night, after everyone had left and we were quietly cleaning up the remnants of the party, Nathan put on the song we danced to at our wedding. I extended my hand and he took it, gently spinning me among the empty glasses and piled up dishes. "You know what I realized," he said as we danced slowly in the half-cleaned kitchen. "What?" "That respect is sexy. Seeing you stand up for me and really value me, it makes me love you even more." I rested my head on his shoulder, taking in his words. "I never thought we'd have to go through all this to get here. I always believed our marriage was perfect." "Maybe perfection isn't the goal," Nathan reflected. "Maybe the goal is to be real. Honest." I looked around, at our messy house after the party, the glasses still waiting to be washed, the little signs of a shared life, not perfect, but genuine. Did you know research shows that couples who face crises together and overcome them end up stronger than those who never face big problems? I commented, recalling one of the many articles I had read during those months of learning. "We're proving that theory, then," he smiled, giving me one last spin. The following week, Brittany invited me for coffee. We sat at a quiet table, and after some small talk, she finally got to the point. "I noticed something different about you and Nathan," she began, stirring sugar in her coffee. "You guys seem, I don't know, more connected." I took a sip, thinking about how to answer. I wanted to be honest without sounding preachy or superior. "We went through a tough time," I eventually admitted. I realized I was talking about Nathan in a way I'd never talk about someone I truly respect. And it was destroying something precious between us. Brittany went quiet for a moment, her fingers playing with the napkin. "Mark mentioned something similar recently," she said softly. "About how I talk about him to others. I thought maybe I was being too sensitive. I felt the same about Nathan in the beginning," I confessed. "But then I realized, why does the person I chose to share my life with deserve less respect than a co-worker or a polite stranger?" Our conversation ended with Brittany looking thoughtful, and I felt that maybe our journey could help other couples avoid the same abyss that almost swallowed our relationship. As I drove home, I reflected on how one single moment, those harmless jokes at Taylor's party, had sparked a complete transformation in my marriage. Sometimes you have to almost lose something to truly see its value. When I arrived home, I found Nathan in the garden, planting the autumn flowers we'd picked out together over the weekend. I stopped for a moment to watch him, focused, careful, completely present in what he was doing. The same man I'd almost reduced to a caricature. "Need any help?" I asked as I walked up to him. He looked up, smiling when he saw me, the smile that was becoming more frequent these days. "Always," he replied, reaching out a hand to help me kneel beside him in the soil. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to get more stories like this. And there, under the late afternoon sun, as we planted flowers that wouldn't bloom for months, I realized that this, the mutual respect, the true partnership, the love that sees the other in all their complexity, was the real happily ever after that none of those childhood stories ever mentioned. Not perfect, not effortless, but deeply real.